start off, I'm going to have you identify yourself. What's your name and what do you do for a living?
My name is Ben Madill. I have lived in this neighborhood all my life. I was born in 1915, and I have always farmed.
Okay.
Except for a short time I worked off the farm.
How did you come to acquire this farm?
The man that owned this farm, Alan Johnson, at that time, in May of 1946, his house burned. And I met him back in the field a couple months later, and he was very upset about the house being gone, and he said he was going to sell the farm. So it ended up that I bought the farm. And in 1947, in the fall of 46, I took possession, and in 1947 was my first year to take a crop off this farm. I was very lucky. I had a very good crop of wheat, and I had enough money from the wheat to make the payment and the taxes on the farm. I thought I'd never get it paid for. It was an awful lot of money at that time. I paid $12,000 for the farm, and I paid $5,000 down, and we had a $7,000 mortgage. And at that time, it seemed like a mountain in front of me.
What's your family history in Mississauga?
Well, as I just say, I was born in Mississauga, really Toronto Township. My grandfather moved from Alton, Ontario, that's near Orangeville, to Toronto Township, to Lot 6, Concession 1 West, in 1906. In 1911, my father married Elizabeth Trainer, and in 1912, my brother was born, and in 1915 I was born, and in 1919 I had a sister born, and in 1921 I had another brother, so that meant there was 4 of us in the family. That time we lived on Lot 6, Concession 1 West, Toronto Township.
So, what were your various sort of jobs as a farmer? Like, what were the day-to-day duties you had once you purchased this farm?
Well, when you're kids, of course, little kids, you don't do great lots. You have little chores. I can remember I used to carry wood in. We burnt wood in the stove, and it would be cut outside and put in piles, and then we'd carry it into the house, carry a pile in every day to burn. So that would be my job, to carry some wood in to burn in the stove each day. We had to carry water in. We had no water in the house. There were no toilets. There was no electricity. And everything was done by hand. With no refrigerators or anything like that.
So, what about when you own the land? Where did you take your goods? How did you sort of cultivate your produce, and sort of how has that changed over the years since you first purchased your farm?
Well, when I was younger, we used to ship cream. Now that meant you took the cream off the milk, and we fed the milk to the pigs and the calves, and sold the cream to the creamery to make butter. And that time we took it to Streetsville. My father took cream to Streetsville to sell. You'd always have some pigs to sell, and you'd have some wheat to sell off the farm, and a few fat cattle. That would be the main income off a farm at that time. There was a lot of people, quite a few farmers at that time, would ship milk. And they shipped milk in 8-gallon cans, and a truck would come around each day and pick it up. And that was hauled into Toronto.
So how has sort of the role of machinery changed on the farm? Like, how did it start and where is it at today?
There's been a drastic change in the way farmers do their work. Drastic change in the machinery. When I was a kid, there was very few tractors. Farming was done with horses. Everything was hard work. You forked the hay by hand, you brought the hay in loose by hand, and you forked it up into the mow. In the summertime, you cut your oats and your barley, the grain, and you stooped it up. That was cut with a binder, of course, and you stooped it up. And then you went out with a wagon and you put it on the wagon and you hauled it in. At that time, we would put it in the barn and leave it there till about September or October. And then there would be a custom thrashing machine come around and you would fork it all out and put it through the thrashing machine. And everything was hand work. The thrashing machine, when I was really young, was run by a steam engine. Steam engines were kind of slow going, but finally the gas tractors took over from the steam engines. My father was, I guess, a little bit of a progressive person. He bought his first tractor in 1926. And that was, so I can only think of one or two or three at the most other tractors in our neighborhood at that time. Tractors were pretty crude at one time, and they were on steel wheels, and they were not used to haul wagons. They were only used to plow and work a field. They were not near as versatile as a rubber-type tractor is today.
What about the role of the combine?
Well, the combine has made a big change to the way farmers have taken off their grain crops. As I just say, we used to cut it with a binder and stoop it up and then haul it in. The combines came about in the late 30s. There was getting to be the odd one around. My brother and I bought one in combine in 1943. It was a 6-foot cut and it was pulled by a tractor. It was not self-propelled. And at that time, farmers did not accept combines very good because they said that they didn't have the straw, they wasted the straw, they couldn't get the straw in good shape, and they couldn't get the grain in good shape. And it took many years for farmers to acclimatize themselves to be able to accept combines in the community. But combines have finally taken over. There is no thrash machines. The Mennonites still use thrash machines and they still use binders. But they are the only people, to my knowledge, that don't use combines. And combines have taken over on every sort of crop. It's taken a long time, but they have finally taken over everything. Electricity. We got electricity in at home in 1936. Now, some of our neighbors had electricity put in 1926. That was the beginning of farmers getting electricity in my neighborhood. And I might mention too some of the names of our neighbors. Some of our neighbors was Chesters, Thompsons, McCrackens, Steeds, Elliots, Croziers, Johnsons, Duntons, Ellises, Colnans, McVickers, people by the name of South, Plants, just to name a few. They all lived already in our neighborhood. And at that time, we used to change hands. When it comes thrashing time in the summer, when we started doing what we called stoop thrashing, the neighbors would come in and help, and we would have 3 or 4 neighbors come with a wagon and horses and haul the grain in and thrash it. And then when we finished, or whoever was first, then you go to the neighbors. Everybody went to the neighbor's place, so that we all helped one another, and then that was the first of the thrashing machine not working in the barn. We changed things from thrashing in the barn to thrashing outside, and then the combine was the next step.
How has sort of community life changed, like, and the role of the farms in Mississauga, like the change of Mississauga from a farming community to it is now? How has that changed the community and the way some people feel?
Well, there's probably more change in Toronto Township than there is in parts when you go back country further. In Toronto Township, of course, there's been a complete change in population, and I mean a complete change in population. My brother, he has passed away now, but he did live on Eglinton Avenue, and his son still farms there, and myself, and as far as I know, we are the only two original farmers left on the farm in Mississauga. I stand to be corrected on that, but I believe that to be true. Farmers all help one another. If they needed anything, they would all come together and help one another. But today, there is no neighbors. We have no neighbors. We don't know who lives next door. And as far as I'm concerned, in this immediate neighborhood where I live, there's only 3 neighbors within 2 miles. And they're not farmers, so I really don't know them, and we don't mix together that. Not because we don't want to, but just because we have nothing in common. But farmers always help one another back and forth, so we always knew one another, and we used to have school concerts in the Old Britannia School, and that was a great get-together, and farmers would have parties. And I remember one time, years ago, we had a little contest. I don't know how it started, but anyway, the east side of number 10 highway and the west side of number 10 highway. And it was which one of us could shoot the most groundhogs. We had a competition between us. And whoever shot the most groundhogs, or should I say it the other way, whoever got the least groundhogs had to rent a hall and have a dance for everybody. And that was quite an excitement. We were all summer shooting groundhogs. And we used to have quite a lot of groundhogs. But now we have no groundhogs around here anymore. The wolves, never had wolves when I was younger. And we never had foxes. But now there is.
How has, like, Mississauga changed? Like, where have all the farms gone? What's there in place of the farms now? Like, how has that changed?
Well, I'm only guessing when I say it started about 20, 25 years ago, building houses down in the Cooksville area and east of Cooksville. And it took a number of years before it got up to this far, but it just seemed to be one farm after another was being bought by speculators, and finally it was being developed, and houses and commercial buildings were being built. But when I first came onto this farm, this was strictly all farmland. There was no commercial buildings, and there was pretty nearly no extra houses on a farm, only the farm house. Immigration of people moving in to and building houses has really taken over, and by doing that, the people don't know one another. We're not all of the same. What's the word? We don't have anything in common. It has now come to the point where there is no farmers left in this Toronto Township area at all. They have all moved out. It's been taken over by developers.
Has there ever been any pressure on you to sell your land, or are people always making offers on this property?
Yes. I sold most of my farm a few years ago, but I still own 6 acres here and all the buildings. Yes, I have people wanting to buy it, but at my age, I don't think I'll bother to sell it. I think I'll stay here as long as I can. It's I built the house and I built the barn. When I bought the farm in 1946, the house had been burnt off it, and there was a nice big barn there. And I built a garage, and we lived in the garage. And a couple of years after that, the barn burnt, and then I had to build a barn, which I did in 1952. And in 1954, we started to build a house. In 1956, we moved into the house. So I feel I put up all the buildings on the property, and I think I might as well stay here and finish it out.
Tell me how the 401 impacted your farm. What happened? What's the story there?
The 401, about 1953, they went through and surveyed for the 401 highway. Well, then it takes a long time before they do much more. They took different surveys, but finally in 1956, they bought the land for the highway, and in 1957, they built the 401 highway from the east to as far as this farm. And that was the end of it, going west. And then in 1958, they opened the road from number 10 highway on further west to past Milton someplace. I'm not sure just where. But they really made a change in my way of life, because I lost nearly half of the acreage that I was farming at that time. Although I did work more land, but it wasn't as handy as the farm was all in one piece.
How much of your land did the 401 go through, and like how did they go about telling you that this was going to happen? Like what was the arrangement with them?
I had heard rumors of it, and I went down to the Department of Highways in 1953 and asked, and they said this was a probability that the highway would be going through here. In 1956, when they finalized it, and we got a registered letter from the Department of Highways saying that the land was now registered under the name of the Queen, and if we wished compensation, we must make application to the Department of Highways. At that time, it was, they took off the 200 acres, they took 90 acres off the 200 acres. So they really cut me down in my acreage farming.
Just to move on, what school did you attend, and how long did you attend it, and what was school life like for you?
Well, I started Britannia Public School in 1921. It was a one-room school. It taught 8 grades. It was called a public school, or one time it was called a common school. And that meant it was open. It wasn't a private school. Any nationality or any religion or anybody could go to the Britannia Public School. There was 8 grades there, and we had one teacher. We went to school at 9 o'clock in the morning. I used to leave home at 7:45, and we left school at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that was 5 days a week. It took 1 year to go through each grade. Now, we didn't call them grades at that time. We called them first class and second class. First class and would be junior first and junior second, And then it would be senior, I'm wrong when I say that. First class would be junior first and senior first. And then the second class would be junior second and senior second, and so on till you had the 4 classes. Then when you finished the end of your senior 4th class, the kids would have to go to a high school in either Brampton or Streetsville to write their examinations to go to high school. At that time, of course, we didn't have much transportation. People would have to, their mother and father would have to, their father would have to drive them to the high school, or they'd have to ride a bicycle, or however they like to get there. I rode a bicycle over to Streetsville High School, where I tried my entrance. But then I went to Brampton High School, and I used to walk over a mile to number 10 Highway, and then I would hitchhike to Brampton High School. And I'm proud to say that I was practically never late. I always had good luck at hitchhiking. Hitchhiking was pretty good them days. And I went to Brampton High School for 3 years.
The Britannia Schoolhouse, how long of a trip was that for you each day, and how did you get there?
Well, to go to school, it was almost 2 miles. And of course, when I started school, number 10 Highway in 1921, number 10 Highway was a gravel road. About 1926, they paved Britannia, the number 10 Highway, from Britannia south, and they didn't plow the snow off until, they didn't keep the snow off regular until maybe about the 1930s. Gradually it worked in that they were plowing the snow off the roads. The side roads, they weren't doing too good a job until the mid-30s before they started, maybe the later 30s before they started plowing the snow all the time off the road so you could drive all winter with a car. Now some winters we didn't have much snow. I remember in 1932, we didn't have hardly any snow. My father never even took the sleigh out of the barn. So people did drive their cars all winter, but the old cars was a little cantankerous with cold weather. They were hard to start in cold weather, so people really didn't use cars a whole lot in the cold weather until they got modernized with their cars, and then of course they run better and they started better. But when it came in once they got into the 40s, cars were getting better and the roads were being cleared all the time, and the horse and buggy, my grandfather used to have a horse and buggy where they used all the time, but by the 1940s there were no horse and buggies left. In fact, in the 1930s they were all gone, I guess. There was all cars from then on. And then tractors, the first tractors came out, as I say, in 1926. My father bought a tractor. Well, it was on steel wheels, and in the late 30s, and then into the 40s, they started coming out with rubber-tired tractors. Nobody bought steel wheels anymore. They're all rubber-tired tractors, and they were great to get around with. They sure saved an awful lot of work, and they sure made it a lot easier for the poor old horse. The old horse, to pull them plows all day was a steady, hard drag. And I always felt sorry for horses the way they had to work. But tractors took over that hard work.
How do you feel about present day Mississauga?
Well, the present day Mississauga has sure changed. It's something like 30 years since they got the name Mississauga. Up to then, it used to be called Toronto Township. It has simply changed from a farming community to a residential and commercial area. There is no farms. There is some land farmed, but there is no such thing as farmers that keep cattle and horses anymore. There is a complete change in this part of in Mississauga. If you go back further country, well, it's still farmed and it's still farmers, and although they don't know one another as well as they used to one time when they had horse and buggies, and now they got cars and they fly down the road and they don't see one another much. But Toronto Township was a complete change because they completely changed the population of Toronto Township when it was mostly all farms and garden land west and east of Cooksville and down along the Dundas and the lakeshore was all garden land. And there were very few houses down through there. And now that's all houses now, so it's a complete change of population.
Could you tell me about your role in preserving the Britannia Schoolhouse, and what is sort of the current status? What is the role of the schoolhouse today?
Well, my role in preserving the schoolhouse, I don't know how great it is, but at one time they wanted, the trustees had pressure on them to sell the school farm, and of course that would include the school too, likely. And Doug Dunton and John Johnson and me, we went around, took up a petition and got people to sign the petition that they don't sell the farm. I don't know how much good it did, but anyway, it ended up they didn't sell the farm. And we've always had, my wife and I have always had an active role in helping to do things down at the school. When they have a reunion, for instance, my memory goes back to a lot of people that went to school with me, and we could dig them up to come to a reunion, or if there's anything going on down at the school, we have been very active in helping to do little jobs down there and help keep the school going. Eva Ardeel and Jim Potter was the first teachers there after it was reopened, and they have done a tremendous amount towards keeping that school to what it is today. The future of the school, to me, right now looks pretty good. They have the school is booked up for kids for the coming year, and they have a teacher there, a full-time teacher, and everything just looks pretty good. They have the friends of the school. There's I don't know how many friends there is. There's 30, 40 friends or more. And they work towards keeping everything in operation and helping to make a little bit of money to buy things. And the school board, of course, financially, they help a lot too to keep the school going. At the present time, it looks pretty good to me. The farm, there's not much going on the farm right now, and they're trying to figure out what to do with the farm. That is the stumbling block, I guess, at the present time, is what they're going to do with the farm. But they're trying to not sell it.
Excellent. You mentioned before sort of a list of names and neighbors and, you know, other farms around here. When you drive around now, or when you go look around now, is there any, what can you still see? Is there any remnants of what was here before, or has it all disappeared in your view? Like, is there anything left? Can you even tell where things used to be?
Well, as I always say, it's a sad state. It used to be when we drove down the road, there was Ellis's lived there, and Leary's lived there, and Graham's lived there, and Thompson's lived there. You knew exactly where everybody was, where the farm was. You knew their driveway, their house, their barn. You knew everything about all the farms around, and their back lanes and their front lanes. And now when I drive down the road, I haven't any idea where them houses stood and where their driveway was. They are all covered with houses or commercial buildings of some kind. And it's rather sad to see the farmers have all gone. There is no farmers left in Mississauga. Of course, we used to call that Toronto Township years ago.
What do you see as the future of Mississauga? What do you see? What do you see coming for the city?
Well, I guess the way the trend is today, the future of Mississauga is going to be built up totally as a city. It's going to be all houses and factories. there's not a great lot of farmland left in Mississauga. Some in the north and the west, but most of the land has been, well, it's either bought up by speculators or it's hasn't been built on. There is no, I doubt if there's an actual farmer owns a farm in Toronto Township or Mississauga. It's a complete change of people, complete change of people.
And in one of your books, I read something that said old people talk about the past a lot because they don't have much of a future, and young people talk about the future a lot because they don't have much of a past. Would you be able to tell me a little bit about that, or just sort of repeat that phrase for me and just sort of talk about why you find that so relevant, especially now?
Well, I guess that kind of speaks for itself. Young people don't know much about the past, so they talk about the future, and the old people, they don't know much about the future, and so they talk about old times. As we all know, there's all kinds of jokes about old people getting old and forgetting things, so I guess that's the biggest discussion nowadays. Vic Crozier's a man that he just passed away last spring, and he was 90, I think 93 years old, and he was born and lived on the same farm, which is on Creditview Road, just at the 403 highway, and he had lived there all his life. His father before him on the farm, and Vic farmed the farm, and he knew a lot of history, but he's gone now.
Can you just tell me a bit about the books that you've written?
Well, yeah, I wrote a short story on the Britannia School. While I was on the farm board, one of the trustees one day said, well, where'd the farm come from? How come we've got the farm? And I thought to myself, well, here's a trustee and he doesn't know where this place came from. So when I came home, I said to my wife, I said, I'm going to sit down and write a little story about the farm, where the farm came from. So I did, and one thing led to another, and I kept on writing, and I wrote a little story about the school and everything. And it was a pretty rough story, of course. I didn't put it in a book form. Eva Ardeel, she got the story, and she put it into book form and had the book printed. And she did an excellent job on the book. Well, and since that, I wrote a story of my life, and then I wrote a second little book on my life. I have something I always say. I was never a writer. I was never an expert student or anything like that at school. But I always say, the more you write, the more you think. And the more you think, the more you write. And it don't matter how your grammar is or how you arrange your story, but write it down. And anybody can write down their life story, and I am sure that their family, their children will appreciate reading that book in years to come. Their great-grandchildren, way down the line, will still appreciate reading what their great-grandparents used to do, how they lived.
Excellent.
I see some odds and ends of clocks.
Sure.
I have a few left, not many. That one,
Sorry, Tommy.
grandfather clocks. Oh, come in, I'll show you what I got.
I'm just gonna leave this here.
This is a collection of,
Getting hickory dickory dock.
they were quite popular in the 30s and 40s, these clocks.
Okay.
And then came electric clocks, and they passed on. They were kitchen clocks.
The blue ones at the top. They're
Sorry, Marge, if I could
Dutch.
just sneak
Yeah.
by you there.
That's scenes on them,
Yeah.
yeah.
My grandmother had something like that because
Is she?
she was Dutch. Yeah.
See, they were all key wine.
Okay.
Spring they went by spring, you see.
Mhm.
But once the electric clocks came in, they went out.
Yep.
Now here's a clock here. That's a peddler man, you see. He's got a clock on his front
Mhm.
and a clock on his back. He's selling clocks. And there's a little pendulum, you see.
Very neat. Very neat.
Just a variety.
Mhm.
Variety. I haven't got as many as I used to have. I got rid of a lot of them. And I have some more out here in the porch. Here's one here you might like. Does the camera pick that up?
Yep.
Does it? There's one there, Tom. See that one?
Mhm.
See the way it works?
Wow. And that's accurate time, I guess?
No, it don't keep very good time.
You know what?
That clock was patented in about 1890, but that one happens to be a new one. It's not old.
I'm Heather. She got me Heather. She got my sister Sarah. And then my dad gave my mom Sue, or Susan, for her birthday. Yeah. Well, I thought I recognized it. It looks Sarah. Yeah.
This is a collection of
Like there are dogs.
Okay.
That's me.
Mhm. No, my grandmother collected.
That again?
No.
It's 2:58 p.m.
Here's one out here I must show you though.
All right.
Trip out.
You'll never grow up.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we're going to have to move you, by gollies. I repair clocks too. Get rid of some of the junk so you can see it.
Quite a pretty one.
That one?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
With the color on the dial.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a clock there. You'll never see another one like it. I can guarantee it. It's totally all my own invention. There's the seconds. There's the minutes. And there's the minutes. And there's the hours. Now if you set this, I'll set it here so you'll see how it works. Now you see that's coming up now, 45 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're changing.
Wow.
There, it's now 12 o'clock.
Is that ever neat?
It's very
Seconds are going around
You're
again.
right. I have never seen a clock like that before.
Took a long winter to figure that out.
That keeps perfect time. It is an electric clock.
That's a pretty fantastic collection, that's for sure.
Yes, it is.
Oh, a little bit. This clock is what you call a wag on the wall. You want to hear it strike in there too?
Sure.
Well,
So why a clock collection? Why a clock collection?
Why?
Yeah. Why?
Oh, I don't know. It just seemed to be a
Seems as though he
natural thing to do. I had an interest in clocks, always did. And I thought clocks was nice to work on. And I got into making clocks. I've made about 25 grandfather clocks. And then I got into repairing clocks. I can only do a certain amount. I'm not a full-fledged jeweler or nothing like that. So I just do a certain amount of repair work. But I have fixed a lot of clocks. And there's one up there I made.
But one day he got 12 and went on. So they mount up when you do that.
What did you say?
I hope so. How do I get over there?
Around the phone.
Okay,
I'll meet you down there.
So do your kids still live in Mississauga?
Do which?
Your kids? Your children?
No. One is.
No.
You know where Arthur is?
Yes.
Well, it's about 6 or 8 miles west of Arthur.
Okay.
They both live on farms.
Yes.
There was no farming feature here. I'd like nothing better than to see when I had one of the kids take over the farm. They work on the farm still.